The interstellar conservation vessel, Artemis, hung in orbit around Death World V-113, a glittering sentinel against the planet's savage beauty. Through the observation deck's reinforced viewport, Dr. Mira Kessler watched the swirling storms that perpetually shrouded the surface. Somewhere beneath those violet clouds roamed the creatures she had crossed 17 star systems to study, most notably the infamous apex predator known as the nocturnal lion. Dr. Kessler, your presence is required in Laboratory Delta. The crisp, artificial voice of the station's AI interrupted her thoughts. The protocol team has assembled and awaits your input. Mira sighed, straightening her standard-issue research uniform, the only one aboard not tailored to a non-human physiology. As the sole human assigned to the Artemis, she had grown accustomed to being the outsider, the token human, as some less diplomatic crew members occasionally whispered when they thought she couldn't hear. "Inform them I'm on my way," she replied, collecting her notes and translation matrices. She strode through the gleaming corridors of the station, passing cereoid analysts with their crystalline appendages tapping furiously at holographic interfaces, and harmonic resonators whose bodies emitted faint musical tones as they floated past. Laboratory Delta occupied nearly a quarter of the vessel's scientific wing, a testament to the Dominion's interest in V-113's unique ecosystem. At the center of the vast chamber stood a containment habitat, a perfect recreation of the planet's dense, phosphorescent jungle, encased within shimmering energy nets. And within those nets paced the nocturnal lion. Even after 3 months of observation, the creature's presence still sent a chill down Mira's spine. Standing nearly 2 meters tall at the shoulder, its midnight black hide absorbed light rather than reflected it, creating an unnerving silhouette that seemed to distort the space around it. 6 muscular limbs ended in hooked claws that could shred titanium alloy, while its skull, the most distinctive and terrifying feature, resembled nothing so much as a grinning death's head, complete with bony protrusions that formed a crown-like structure above 6 golden eyes. Commander Thrax, the cereoid officer overseeing the research operation, swiveled his crystalline form toward her as she entered. "Dr. Kessler, you're precisely 4 minutes and 23 seconds late." "My apologies, Commander," Mira replied evenly. "I was reviewing my latest observations." "And have those observations yielded anything of value?" The cereoid's voice tinkled like breaking glass, what passed for sarcasm in his species. "Unlike the extensive data collected by our superior methods?" Mira bit back a sharp retort. The Dominion hierarchy placed humans near the bottom of their intellectual classification system, largely due to what they considered the primitive simplicity of human language compared to the multidimensional communication of species like the cereoids. "Each approach has its merits," she said diplomatically, taking her place at the briefing table. Around her sat the elite of the Dominion's protocol team, Ambassador Lyra, a harmonic resonator whose body shimmered with musical patterns, 3 cereoid analysts whose names Mira could never properly pronounce, and Orion, the techno-psionic liaison whose 6 eyes blinked in perfect synchronicity as they monitored the AI translation systems. "We have been attempting communication with specimen NL Alpha for 93 days. Commander Thrax began, projecting a holographic timeline above the table. Despite employing the Dominion's most sophisticated translation matrices, ultra-wave signal patterns, empathic pheromone emissions, and AI-driven linguistic models, we have detected no meaningful response." Ambassador Lyra's body emitted a low, disappointed chord. "I have personally attempted 67 distinct harmonic sequences, calibrated to resonate with the specimen's reported vocalization range. It has shown no recognition, No repetition. No signs of linguistic comprehension. "The creature is uncommunicative," stated one of the Cereoid analysts flatly. "Perhaps even non-sentient by Dominion standards." Mira glanced toward the habitat, where the nocturne lion continued its relentless pacing. "With respect," she said carefully, "we may be approaching this from the wrong angle. Not all communication is verbal or even conscious. There could be behavioral cues we're missing." "Dr. Kessler," interrupted Commander Thrax, his crystalline structure flashing with impatience, "we value your enthusiasm. However, your species' limited experience with interspecies communication is precisely why human methodology ranks 6th class in the Dominion protocols. The specimen has been subjected to over 4,000 distinct communication attempts using first-class methods. It has responded to none." Orion, the techno-psionic, tilted their head. "Our AI models have analyzed every movement, every biological function of the specimen. There is a 99.87% probability that it lacks the neural capacity for symbolic language as defined by Dominion standards." Mira kept her expression neutral, though frustration burned within her. The Dominion's rigid hierarchical thinking was exactly why they brought a human aboard. They needed the diversity of approach, but they rarely actually listened to her input. "Then perhaps we should consider alternatives to the Dominion standards," she suggested quietly. The room fell silent. Commander Thrax's crystalline form stiffened, refracting light in sharp, dangerous patterns. "The Dominion standards," he said coldly, "are the culmination of 17,000 years of multi-species research across 3 galactic sectors. They are not subject to revision based on human intuition." Before Mira could respond, an alarm sliced through the tense atmosphere. All heads turned toward the habitat enclosure, where the nocturne lion had suddenly stopped its pacing. It stood perfectly still, all 6 of its golden eyes fixed directly on the observation window, directly at Mira. "Specimen showing unusual behavior," reported one of the Cereoid analysts, translucent appendages flying over the control panel. Heart rate elevated, musculature tensed. "Increase containment field strength," ordered Commander Thrax. "Prepare sedation protocols." The nocturne lion took one step forward, then another, its gaze never leaving Mira. There was something in those golden eyes, something that made her breath catch in her throat. Not mindless aggression, but with a bone-chilling roar that reverberated through the laboratory, the creature suddenly launched itself at the energy nets. Sparks flew as its massive form collided with the barrier, which flickered dangerously. "Containment breach imminent," shouted Orion, their 6 eyes widening in alarm. "Field integrity at 63% and falling." The laboratory erupted in chaos. Cereoid analysts scrambled for the exits, while Ambassador Lyra's body emitted shrill, discordant notes of panic. Commander Thrax barked orders as emergency protocols activated throughout the station. "Deploy maximum sedation. Authorization Thrax Alpha 7. Automated defense systems whirred to life, targeting the raging beast with precision sedation darts, but the nocturne lion moved with impossible speed, dodging the projectiles while continuing its assault on the weakening barrier. "Field integrity at 28%, announced the station AI with eerie calm. "Evacuation of Laboratory Delta recommended." As the others fled toward the reinforced doors, Mira remained frozen in place, her eyes locked with the creature's. In that moment of connection, she saw something that the others, in their panic, had missed. The lion wasn't trying to escape, it was trying to communicate. The energy net gave one final, spectacular burst of light before collapsing entirely. The nocturne lion stood amid the sparking remnants of the containment field, its massive form now unrestrained within the laboratory. Station-wide alarms blared as emergency bulkheads slammed down, sealing Laboratory Delta from the rest of the Artemis. Mira found herself trapped inside with the apex predator of Deathworld V-113. Dr. Kessler, remain absolutely still. Commander Thrax's voice came through the communication system. Secondary containment protocols have been initiated. We are preparing an emergency extraction. The nocturne lion took another step forward, its death's head skull tilted slightly to one side. It made no move to attack, despite being well within range to eviscerate her with a single swipe of its clawed limbs. "Wait," Mira said quietly, both to the creature and to the panic-stricken protocol team monitoring from the safety of the adjacent control room. "It's not aggressive. Look at its posture." Indeed, the feared apex predator had relaxed its powerful shoulders, and its tail, a whip-like appendage capable of delivering lethal toxins, lay almost languid against the laboratory floor. "Dr. Kessler, your assessment is irrelevant." Commander Thrax's voice cut through the tension. "The specimen has demonstrated unacceptable aggression and destruction of Dominion property. The conservation directive has been superseded by security protocols. The creature will be permanently culled once you are extracted." "Culled?" Mira couldn't hide her horror. "Commander, that's an unnecessary and extreme response. The specimen hasn't shown any direct aggression toward personnel. It has destroyed a Class 7 containment field and caused incalculable damage to our research facility," interrupted Thrax. "The decision has been made. Prepare for extraction in 3 minutes." As the communication cut off, Mira found herself alone with the nocturne lion. 3 minutes until armed security would burst through those doors with orders to kill the magnificent creature before her. She studied the lion carefully, noting how it mirrored her stillness. Its 6 golden eyes blinked in a peculiar pattern, left to right, then right to left. Its ears twitched at precise intervals, and its tail curled in what almost appeared to be a deliberate sequence. Patterns, repetition, deliberate movements. A wild theory began to form in Mira's mind. "You've been communicating all along, haven't you?" she whispered. Just not in any way they recognized. The lion's head tilted again, at exactly the same angle as before. When the extraction team burst through the emergency bulkhead 90 seconds later, they found Dr. Mira Kessler standing exactly where they'd left her, but now she was furiously inputting data into her personal terminal while the nocturne lion sat on its haunches, watching her with what could only be described as patient interest. "Dr. Kessler, step away from the specimen immediately," ordered the security chief, a mantoid whose chitinous armor bristled with offensive capabilities. "I will not," Mira replied without looking up, "and neither will you proceed with the culling order." Commander Thrax pushed his way through the security team, his crystalline form pulsing with angry light. "This is a direct violation of Dominion protocol. The specimen has demonstrated intelligence and communicative intent." Mira interrupted, finally looking up from her terminal. "I've documented 17 distinct behavioral patterns that correlate with standard Dominion greeting protocols. They're just not expressed in ways your technology was programmed to recognize." "Impossible," scoffed Thrax. "Our systems are calibrated to detect all known forms of sentient communication." "All known forms," Mira emphasized. "This is something new, or perhaps something so old that we've forgotten how to see it." The nocturne lion rose to its full, intimidating height, causing the security team to raise their weapons. But instead of attacking, it began a series of deliberate movements, the same patterns Mira had observed earlier, but now performed with exaggerated clarity. "Look," she urged the others. The ear twitches correspond to standard phonemic patterns. The tail movements align perfectly with Dominion diplomatic sequencing. It's been responding to our communication attempts all along. We just weren't paying attention to the right signals. Ambassador Lyra floated forward, her luminous form pulsing with cautious curiosity. If this is true, why would it destroy the containment field? Mira took a deep breath. Because we weren't listening. After 3 months of failed attempts, it escalated to ensure it had our attention. Commander Thrax's crystalline structure vibrated with skepticism. This is anthropomorphization, Dr. Kessler, a dangerous human tendency to project sentience where none exists. Then let me prove it, Mira challenged. Give me 24 hours with the specimen, no containment field, no sedation protocols, no technological interfaces. Absolutely not, Thrax replied immediately. The risk is unacceptable. The risk of being wrong is worse, countered Mira. If I'm right and you proceed with culling, you'll have destroyed a sentient being capable of communication, a direct violation of the Dominion's primary conservation directive. The invocation of the directive, the highest law in Dominion space, gave Thrax pause. His crystalline form shimmered as he processed the implications. 12 hours, he finally conceded. Under full observation, with emergency protocols standing by. At the first sign of aggression, we terminate the experiment and the specimen. Mira nodded, relief flooding through her. Agreed. The next 12 hours were the most intense of Mira's scientific career. As the Artemis's crew watched in tense fascination, she meticulously documented every movement of the nocturne lion, correlating its behaviors with known communication patterns across 17 different species. She discovered that its 6 eyes blinked in sequences that precisely matched cereoid mathematical progressions. Its tail movements corresponded to harmonic resonator emotional expressions. Even the way it paced the habitat, which the protocol team had dismissed as restless aggression, formed spatial patterns that aligned with ancient Dominion navigational codes. But most fascinating of all was the creature's response to Mira herself. When she removed all her technological equipment, the translation matrices, the recording devices, the analysis tools, and simply sat in the habitat, the lion approached her with unmistakable curiosity. "You're not going to hurt me, are you?" she asked softly, extending her empty hands to show she carried no weapons, no devices, nothing that could be perceived as threatening. The lion stopped 2 meters from her position, its massive head lowering slightly as it studied her with its golden eyes. For a long moment, neither moved. In the observation deck above, the entirety of the protocol team held their collective breath. "Your colleagues think you're dangerous." Mira continued conversationally, as if discussing the weather with an old friend. "They think you can't communicate, that you're just an animal acting on instinct. But I think they're wrong. I think you've been trying to talk to us all along, and we've been too wrapped up in our fancy technology to notice." The lion tilted its head, the same deliberate angle she'd observed before. Then, slowly, with ceremonial deliberation, it lowered its massive death's head skull to the ground and inched forward until its bony crown rested mere centimeters from Mira's feet. In the observation deck, alarms began to sound as monitoring systems registered the unprecedented proximity. Commander Thrax's crystalline form pulsed with alarm, while Ambassador Lyra emitted shocked musical tones. Orion's 6 eyes blinked rapidly as they struggled to process what they were seeing. "Terminate the experiment," Thrax ordered. "The specimen is in attack position." "Belay that order," countered Ambassador Lyra, her form glowing with scientific wonder. "This is not aggression. This is submission." Mira barely heard the commotion above. Her focus remained entirely on the magnificent creature before her. the apex predator of a death world, laying its most vulnerable part, its head, at her feet. With slow, deliberate movements, she extended her hand, no gadgets, no sensors, nothing but human flesh and bone, and gently touched the creature's mane. The coarse, midnight black fur felt like steel wool beneath her fingers. Yet the lion made no move to pull away. Instead, it emitted a low, rhythmic rumble that reverberated through the habitat, neither a growl nor a purr, but something altogether different. The sound spread through the chamber, resonating at a frequency that somehow calmed the blaring alarms. The observation deck fell silent as the crew watched in stunned disbelief. "It's communicating," whispered Orion. Their 6 eyes widened in astonishment. "But not through any method in our databases." "It's communicating through presence," Mira replied, her voice carrying through the habitat's audio systems. "Through vulnerability, through trust." For the remainder of the 12-hour period, the nocturne lion refused to move from Mira's side. When she sat, it sat beside her. When she walked the perimeter of the habitat, it matched her pace, its massive form a constant shadow. When she stopped to examine a particular plant specimen, it waited patiently until she finished. By the time Commander Thrax called for a formal review, the evidence was undeniable. The creature had demonstrated not only sentience, but a sophisticated form of communication that transcended the Dominion's classification systems. "I propose an immediate recalibration of our approach," announced Ambassador Lyra at the Emergency Council meeting. Her luminous form pulsed with enthusiasm as she projected holographic data above the conference table. Dr. Kessler's methodology has revealed an entirely new category of communication, what she terms presence-based mutual recognition. It appears the specimen communicates primarily through spatial relationships, physical proximity, and synchronized behaviors rather than through traditional symbolic exchange. Commander Thrax's crystalline structure had lost some of its rigid angularity, softened perhaps by the weight of scientific evidence, or by the humbling realization that the Dominion's vaunted protocols had failed where a simple human approach had succeeded. "The culling order is officially rescinded," he announced, each word tinkling like reluctant crystal. "Laboratory Delta will be redesignated as a joint research sanctuary, with Dr. Kessler assigned as primary liaison to specimen NL Alpha." "The nocturne lion," Mira corrected gently. "If we're acknowledging its sentience, perhaps we should stop referring to it as a specimen." Thrax made a sound like breaking glass, a cereoid sigh. "Very well. The nocturne lion will be recognized as a research partner rather than a subject, with all the protections and considerations that status entails." Orion, who had been uncharacteristically quiet throughout the meeting, finally spoke. "I have analyzed our failure comprehensively. Our translation systems were calibrated to detect and interpret symbolic language, harmonic resonance, telepathic emission, and technological transmission. We never considered that advanced communication could manifest as simply being. Sometimes the most profound connections require no words at all," Mira observed, thinking of ancient Earth cultures where silence and presence carried more meaning than hours of discourse. "The lion wasn't refusing to communicate. It was waiting for us to stop talking and start listening." In the days that followed, the Artemis underwent a transformation. The rigid hierarchy that had governed its operations loosened as specialists from across the Dominion requested transfers to study the revolutionary communication techniques pioneered by Dr. Mira Kessler and her unlikely partner. The habitat, once a sterile recreation designed for observation, evolved into a genuine sanctuary. The energy nets were permanently disabled, replaced by a mutual trust agreement that seemed to transcend species boundaries. The nocturne lion remained free to come and go as it pleased, yet it chose to stay, dividing its time between the familiar artificial jungle and Mira's research laboratory. Most remarkable was the creature's behavior toward the other researchers. While it maintained a respectful distance from most crew members, it displayed varying degrees of acceptance based on their approach. Those who arrived with scanning equipment and translation matrices were largely ignored, while those who adopted Mira's methods of quiet presence were gradually permitted closer. It's establishing a communication hierarchy of its own, Mira explained to a fascinated ambassador Lyra, whose luminous form now regularly dimmed to avoid overwhelming the lion's sensitive eyes. Not based on technological sophistication or linguistic complexity, but on genuine connection and respect. A revolutionary concept, admitted Lyra, watching as the lion performed a series of movements that she was learning to recognize as a greeting. The Dominion has always classified species according to their communicative complexity, but perhaps we've been measuring the wrong attributes entirely. Commander Thrax, too, had undergone a remarkable transformation. His initially rigid skepticism had given way to a cautious curiosity that occasionally bordered on enthusiasm. He had even attempted to sit quietly in the habitat, though his crystalline form's natural light refraction made true stillness impossible. I have submitted a formal recommendation to the Dominion Council. He informed Mira one cycle as they observed the lion from the laboratory's main console. I am proposing a complete revision of our communication protocols, incorporating what we now call the Kessler method. Mira raised an eyebrow, genuinely surprised. That's quite an honor. Commander, it is a scientific necessity, Thrax replied, his tone matter-of-fact despite the personal cost of such an admission. Our current methods failed to recognize a clearly sentient being. One must wonder how many other species we have similarly misclassified. The greatest surprise came 3 weeks after the containment breach, when the nocturne lion began accompanying Mira to other sections of the Artemis. The first time it appeared behind her in the main corridor, trailing her like a massive shadow as she made her way to the dining hall. The entire crew froze in terror, but the creature simply waited at the threshold while Mira collected her meal, then escorted her back to her quarters with the solemn dignity of a royal guard. "It's protecting you," observed Orion, whose technological interfaces had been temporarily abandoned in favor of direct observation. "It has assigned itself as your colleague." "Or I'm protecting it," Mira suggested with a smile. "Perhaps from its perspective, I'm the one providing the escort." This possibility, that the humans might be perceived as the protectors rather than the protected, caused a ripple of reconsideration throughout the Dominion hierarchy. Species previously dismissed as primitive were re-examined. Communication protocols that had remained unchanged for millennia were suddenly open to revision. And at the center of this quiet revolution stood a human xenolinguist and the apex predator that had laid its head at her feet and refused to move. 6 months after her arrival on the Artemis, Dr. Mira Kessler stood once again at the observation deck, gazing down at the swirling storms of Death World V-113. But now she was not alone. The nocturne lion sat beside her, its massive form reflected in the reinforced viewport as it too contemplated the planet below. "They want us to lead a surface expedition," she told the creature, though she had long since stopped believing that it understood her words. Their communication existed on a different level, one of shared space, synchronized movements, and mutual trust. "To study your kind in their natural habitat. What do you think? Ready to go home?" The lion turned its death's head skull toward her, 6 golden eyes blinking in that now familiar pattern that Mira had come to recognize as consideration. Then, With deliberate precision, it lowered its massive head to rest briefly against her side before returning its gaze to the viewport. Ambassador Lyra, who had been quietly observing from the entrance to the deck, emitted a soft chord of understanding. "It has just told you that it is already home." Mira smiled, resting her hand on the creature's midnight black mane. "Yes, I believe it has." As the Artemis continued its orbit around Death World V-113, its mission evolved from mere observation to genuine communion. The barriers between species, literal and figurative, had been broken not by technological marvels or linguistic breakthroughs, but by the simple willingness of one human to sit in silence and listen to what wasn't being said. And in that silence, in that shared presence, a new language had been born, one that transcended words and worlds alike.